everyone, it's Jennifer from Flux. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful rustic farmhouse woven wreath. This is a really pretty wreath that's nice and neutral. It could go with any home decor. And I wanted to use some yarn in a different and exciting way. So I actually took some really textured, fluffy yarn and wove it around this wreath form. And we're going to get into all that in just a minute. And then I wanted a little bit more texture, so I added this fun burlap bow and a twine hanging loop. So it's full of texture and really could go with any type of decor. So we're going to learn how to do all this, and this uses just some really basic supplies as well. So let's get started. For this project, you'll need a wire wreath form. That's going to help us with the weaving of the yarn. I'm using a 12-inch wire wreath form. Now, if you can't find a wreath form that looks like this, you could always use a styrofoam or one of those wreath forms that kind of look like straw, kind of wrapped up, and you could just wrap the yarn around the entire form and not weave it. But if you want to weave it like I am, this wire, these little bars will be weaving in and out of. You'll also need, if you'd like to add a bow, I have some burlap ribbon. It's wired. It gives me a little bit more control when I'm making bows, or whatever ribbon you like for your project. I kind of went with neutral colors for this. You're going to need a pair of scissors, and then I also grabbed some twine because I thought it would make a nice little hanging loop for my wreath later. But you could also use a little piece of yarn as well. So let's get started. The yarn I'm going to be using is called Duvet by Filatura de Crossa. And the reason I chose this is because, like I said before, I wanted to go with neutrals, something nice and neutral for the house. But also, if you see this strand is super textured and bulky, I thought this would be great yarn for this. So when you're choosing your yarn, you can go with what I used, or just use something as thick and as textured and bulky as you can, and that'll make your wreath, the weaving of it, and hide these bars and everything also. So just look for something thick and bulky and kind of fluffy. So what we're going to do to begin, and we're not going to be using any needles or hooks or anything like that, is you want to cut a piece of yarn. It's easier if you cut the yarn into manageable lengths because we are going to be weaving this. And you can really begin anywhere you like. So go ahead and take a piece of yarn, and in one of these inner bars here, go ahead and tie the yarn to make a little knot. And you'll want to do this on the back side of it so that you can hide it. Any knots that we're going to make when we join new pieces of yarn, we're going to tie them onto the back, and then you can just trim it down later or now, and you know, it'll be hidden. Okay, so once you have your yarn knotted onto your form, you're going to start weaving. So we're going to do under, over, all the way around our wreath here. So let me just get it started so I can show you. When you come up to these end bars at either end, you want to go around that bar, okay? So we're just going to go over, under, over, around the bar, over, under, around the next bar, over, under, around the next bar, and over and under and around the bar. Now, once you've done this a few times, you can go ahead and pull the yarn, pull, and it'll kind of like sit into place. But you can still see some spaces, so what you'll want to do is push it over, okay? If you've ever done looming on a loom, you'll know that it's kind of the same idea, okay? And the more snug that you push it together, it'll hide some of these bars. If you really don't like the look, because a lot of time it comes in this kind of floral green color, you could always spray paint it if you're having trouble, or but just, you know, before you start with the yarn, obviously. So if you get a few on there and you're not liking it, but I found that before we started, I did a little sample, and it hid it quite nicely if you kind of push it over and pack it in when you're finished, okay? So just keep wrapping your yarn over, under, and you're going to go around the whole wreath, okay? So I'm just going to keep going with mine. And then what I'm going to do next is show you how to join a new piece of yarn on. So let's pretend that we ran out of yarn here. I'm just going to cut it off, okay? All right, so let's pretend like we ran out of yarn and we have some stuff woven on here. So what you're going to do is just take the old yarn and a new piece of yarn and just tie it right together. and then keep weaving. Now this is going to stick out, and I'm going to show you in a second, but you want to get back to weaving before you start. So continue the same way, go over, under, and you're going to see this knot showing, okay? So just get it woven in first, and then we'll kind of tuck it in there. I'm going to show you how to do that, okay? You just slide it out of the way so I can see what I'm doing here. Okay, so just weave a little bit more of your wreath. Okay, and then just remember, pull it snug, push it aside. Now take these strands and then just send them to the back of your wreath. Okay. So yeah, we're just going to put those in the back. Now they might fall into place on the back and you won't have to do this, but if they do stick out in the front, you want to pull those to the back. So tighten it up, grab your little tails, and then just push it on over. Okay, so we're getting some nice texture there. Flip your wreath over once you get it where you need it to be, and just give it a little snip. Okay, just like that. Okay, so what we're going to do is continue with our yarn going all the way around, and then when we rejoin, I'm going to show you how to add a really pretty bow with our burlap yarn. We don't need any fancy tools to make our bow. I'm going to show you how I do it in my hand, and how to, if you can get wired yarn, that helps a lot. It gives you a little bit more control and get those loops nice and full. So let's continue weaving our wreath, and then we'll rejoin in just a moment. One little thing I wanted to show you, when we get to these middle bars, if you just keep weaving like you normally would, they're more apparent than than the rest of the wreath. So what you'll want to do is take your yarn and go around them in like an S pattern. So just see how I'm going around the bars, just making loops like that, going around, and then come back through. We're just kind of doing this to conceal. And I have this pushed over right now. We'll fluff it back up in just a moment. But you want to come around and back down too. And that'll hide some of these bars here as you weave. So you just have to do it a little bit differently when you come back down on those middle bars, just to kind of hide things a little bit. And just go in between and around. You can see, where's the other one? Back here, I did another one and I concealed it so that you can't really see it. Okay, so just do that for the rest of your wreath. And keep going around, weaving like we were doing before. And also going around the dividing bars with like an S shape. Okay, so I'm going to keep weaving my wreath, and then we'll rejoin in just a bit, and we'll get started on our bow and finish up our wreath. Okay, so I went ahead and got my wreath completely covered with the fluffy yarn, and it looks really cute. So the next thing you'll want to do, now if you want to leave it plain, that's fine, but I want to add a bow onto mine, and I have some burlap ribbon that I really like with this. It's just some really nice textures together. So what I want to do next is cut a little piece of scrap yarn just from the yarn that I used here. That's what we're going to use to tie the bow on. And then you can grab your ribbon, and you can use any ribbon you like here. And a lot of times with this ribbon is wired, and it helps you get a little bit more control, and you can kind of reshape it. And if it gets smashed, you can kind of fluff it back up. But a lot of times with this wired ribbon, you'll have an area here that's folded over. Just unbend it, and if it looks too wrinkled, you can just snip it right off. Alright, so now that we have our ribbon, you want to have your scissors and your scrap yarn handy to grab really quick when you are done making your bow. Now I'm going to show you how to make kind of one of those fluffy gift wrap bows. If you feel more comfortable, making bows sometimes is out of people's comfort zone. If you feel more comfortable using a pre-made bow or just tie a simple little 2-loop bow, that's fine too. Whatever you feel comfortable doing. So what I like to do is just unwrap some, and then what we're going to do is make our first tail. So you know, when you have a bow, you have 2 tails that hang down. We're going to create our first tail. Just create a length, and you can even take your wreath and kind of measure how you like it to hang. But then we're just going to take it and pinch it, just like that. Now I'm using burlap, so burlap yarn is very stiff and kind of thick. So we're not going to make our bow humongous. We're just going to kind of make a few loops on our bow. Okay, if you have something that's a little bit thinner or floppier, you can make lots of loops. So what we want to do is pinch the yarn to make that first tail, and then we're going to make a loop. So wrap it around in a loop, and then we're going to pinch it one more time. Okay, I'm just going to make a couple loops here. Then we're going to take our yarn, and I'm going to have to hold this really tight because, again, it is pretty bulky. And then we're going to twist our burlap like that and make another loop of the same size. So just bring it back in, okay? And then what we're going to do is once more take your ribbon and twist it. This burlap is very, very thick. And I'm going to make my loop just slightly smaller. Okay, just like that. And then go ahead and twist it one more time. Just twist it around and then make your loop just slightly smaller than that loop, okay? Now, I'm not going to make mine any bigger because tying the middle of this is going to be so thick, it's going to be hard to do. So this is going to be my last loop except for that one center loop to kind of hide all the mechanics of this bow. So give it one more really strong twist and then make a loop in the middle. See how I did that? Give it another pinch like we did before. And then you're going to give it another twist and you're going to let this tail go down the back of your bow. Okay? Now let's give it a quick cut. We can kind of tidy this up later. But what we're going to do is we're going to take, now see I have one tail down and one tail up. We're going to fix all that. We're going to let this go down the back, but we're not going to worry about that right now. This is where having wired yarn really helps. So take your scrap yarn that you had before and take it through the middle. See if you see like the cross section, take it through all of those loops that we just created. And I cut mine, this is about 12 to 18 inches, just as a side note. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our bow, just be very careful not to let go too early. And then we're going to kind of cinch it up, flip it over. And then what you'll want to do is take your yarn, and I like to use a matching piece of yarn. You can also use a piece of this ribbon if your ribbon is a little bit thinner than mine. That's why I used yarn. And then our bow is just about ready, but we need to kind of shape it up a little bit. So we're going to take some of the loops and go up a little, take some of the loops and go down. Now I will say this takes a lot of practice. I've made many bows. And again, if you want to just do like kind of a traditional little bow, you can do that too. But this is always makes a nice wreath bow when you do it this way. Now that one tail, we're just going to take it down the front, and then our bow is ready to be attached to our wreath. And we're going to kind of shape it up a little bit more when we get it onto the wreath as well. So what we want to do, I'm going to put mine at the top. Now you can put yours wherever you like. And I'm just going to kind of go in between here with my tails. So we're going to do one side and go down the other side. We're kind of going in between these pieces of yarn and flip it over. Now you can see when I wove this all in, I went around the hanging loop and the knot is in the back. Just wanted to point that out while we're behind the wreath here. And then I'm just going to tie this right on. Now, I'm going to make my bow permanent. This bow will always be on this wreath, but sometimes you might want to switch the bow out for different seasonal events or holidays. So what you can do is tie it in a bow. So you can just kind of undo it and pull the bow off if you like, but I'm going to make mine a permanent fixture on my wreath. So just snip this back. You don't have to weave it in because it's going to be facing up against the wall or what have you. And you can see where I attached all the yarn. I just kind of trimmed everything. I didn't even worry about weaving anything in. So let's flip this back over, and we're just going to shape up this cute little burlap bow. We're going to shape it up a little bit. And then with your tails, just get your tails all lined up here. I'm going to make mine go down. Now what I like to do too with bows is to get, hold on, let me just get that loop is, there we go. What I like to do with my tails for my bow is to just get them at a nice angle, okay? So I'm going to go angle upward on this side and angle upward on this side. And our wreath is all finished and it looks very pretty. It's full of texture and it's very rustic looking and it is all ready to be hung. And my twine matches my ribbon very nicely. So that is how you make the Rustic Farmhouse woven wreath. Thanks so much for watching and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Fiber Flux video updates. Thanks again.